She was mocked for her blue eyes, until the Korean Mafia chose her. The sunlight slanted through the restaurant's grand windows, painting the polished wooden floors with golden stripes. The air smelled faintly of sesame, soy, and simmering broth, an intoxicating mix of luxury and comfort. Adele moved between the tables with practiced grace, her tray steady despite the buzzing energy around her. Yet even in this bustling, refined environment, she felt the weight of the eyes that never really saw her. "They're staring again," she thought, her jaw tightening slightly. The whispers, sharp as knives, floated from behind her. "Does she even belong here? Those eyes, looks like she's wearing colored contacts." Adele's blue eyes, a trait that had been both a source of wonder and ridicule since childhood, burned with quiet defiance. She lowered her gaze for a moment, forcing a polite smile, and set down a glass of water in front of a table of diners. "Here's your water. Enjoy your meal," she said, her voice calm, professional. A soft chuckle came from behind her. "Wow, she really acts like she's untouchable," one of her co-workers muttered. Adele didn't turn. She had learned long ago that confrontation only gave them power. Instead, she let the words wash over her, reminding herself that their cruelty said more about them than about her. She moved to the staff station, refilling drinks. The hum of the restaurant, the clink of dishes, the low murmur of conversation. It was all background music to a daily performance she'd perfected. Every step, every gesture was precise, flawless, invisible in its perfection. She thrived in invisibility in professionalism. Yet, invisibility had never meant respect. Her shoulders stiffened at the familiar sound of sleek tires against the curb outside. She glanced toward the windows and her pulse quickened. A black luxury car had arrived. Its doors opened with a subtle, commanding click. The presence that emerged silenced the room without a word. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and moved with a confidence that made the whispers in the restaurant stop mid-breath. A subtle hint of a tattoo peeked from beneath his collar, a dangerous promise beneath refined elegance. Every head turned to him instinctively. And then, as though the world had condensed into a single point of gravity, his gaze found hers. Adele's heart skipped. Not from fear, not from excitement, but from something she couldn't yet name. In that instant she felt seen. Not for the uniform, not for the service, not even for the blue eyes that had drawn mockery all her life. He saw her. The rest of the restaurant seemed to blur, the clinking of glasses and the soft chatter fading into a background hum. All that remained was the silent exchange, the quiet acknowledgement that something was shifting. Something was about to begin. And Adele, for the first time in a long while, didn't flinch. "They mocked my eyes," she thought, "but him, he sees me." The restaurant's golden light seemed suddenly charged, and the day that had begun as any other promised something dangerous, irresistible, and life-changing. The evening had fallen, and the restaurant transformed into a sanctuary of soft lights and muted clinks of fine china. The luxury of the space seemed to hum with anticipation, as though it sensed the arrival of someone extraordinary. Adele adjusted her apron, smoothing it over her hips. She could feel the weight of her co-workers' curious glances. They still whispered, still judged. But she had learned long ago to let them talk. Tonight, however, the tension in the air was different. It wasn't the usual petty cruelty. Something else had arrived. He had requested her specifically. Adele had heard murmurs in the kitchen when the reservation came in. The VIP guest, he specifically asked for her. "Are you serious?" He noticed her. "You heard right. The one with the unusual eyes." She suppressed a small, incredulous smile. Her heart raced, but not with fear. With every step toward the VIP section, she felt a strange mixture of nerves and exhilaration, like walking on the edge of a cliff with the wind teasing her hair. The man was seated at a private table, a low light casting angular shadows across his face. He looked untouchable, powerful, dangerous. Yet there was a calm elegance to him that made the chaos of the restaurant seem irrelevant. When Adele approached, their eyes met. He didn't glance at her uniform. He didn't scan her like a passing server. He looked at her, really looked, and it sent a shiver down her spine. "Good evening," she said, her voice steady, professional. "Good evening," he replied, his tone smooth, low, almost a purr, carrying an accent that rolled the edges of his words like silk over steel. "The one with the unusual eyes, yes?" Adele blinked, taken aback by the audacity and precision of his attention. She forced a polite, slightly sarcastic smile. "And you are?" she asked, circling the table with a practiced grace. He studied her quietly, and then a faint smile curved at the edge of his lips. "Someone who appreciates honesty. You serve with a flair. I find that rare." Adele's lips quirked upward, the corner of her mouth twitching. "I serve as I am commanded." Flair is optional, she said, a playful edge to her voice. He leaned back slightly, intrigued. Careful. Sarcasm doesn't suit everyone. But you, it suits you. The words made her pulse quicken. There was a spark here, an electricity that neither fear nor caution could extinguish. Yet beneath the teasing, beneath the charming veneer, she sensed the undeniable weight of danger. He was powerful, someone who could ruin lives with a gesture, a glance. And somehow she didn't want him to. She served his drink with the precision of a seasoned professional, but her eyes never left his. The world had narrowed to just the two of them, the hum of the restaurant fading into nothing. A flicker of something unspoken passed between them. It was dangerous, thrilling, and entirely unexpected. Adele felt her breath catch as the man's gaze lingered longer than it should have, as if he was memorizing her. The sound of a waiter clearing another table reminded her that life outside this moment still existed. But when she turned to leave, she found herself glancing back, and he was still watching, still smiling faintly. Adele's mind raced. Who is he? Why me? And yet, deep down she already knew, her life was about to change. The first seed had been planted, the mysterious guest had noticed her, and nothing would ever be the same. This man, he doesn't just see my eyes. He sees me. And Adele, for the first time in years, allowed herself to wonder what it would feel like to be truly seen. The restaurant's back kitchen was a world apart from the elegance of the dining room. The air was warm and tinged with the scent of simmering broths and sizzling meats. Here, Adele could finally exhale, letting her shoulders drop from the tension she carried like armor. Her coworker Mina, a kind-hearted server who often offered quiet support, leaned against the counter, watching her carefully. You're different when you serve him, Mina said, her voice low. I've never seen you like that before. Calm, confident, like you belong there. Adele gave a faint smile, rinsing a glass with methodical precision. He's unlike anyone I've ever met, she admitted. It's not fear. Not exactly. Curiosity. I can't stop thinking about him. Mina frowned, concern etching her delicate features. Adele, be careful. That man, he's dangerous. You've seen the way people talk about him. Powerful, untouchable, the kind of man you don't just flirt with. Adele laughed softly, though it didn't reach her eyes. I'm not flirting. I'm observing. You notice me, Mina. Not just my eyes, not just my uniform, me. All of me. How often does that happen? Mina hesitated. Rarely. But it doesn't make it safe. Adele wiped her hands on her apron and leaned against the counter, the kitchen's warm light brushing her blue eyes with a subtle glow. Safe isn't interesting, she murmured. I've spent my whole life being cautious, hiding pieces of myself just to fit in. And for what? Whispered insults and sideways glances. Tonight feels different. Mina shook her head but smiled faintly. You always have to dive head first, don't you? Adele shrugged. Some things are worth the risk. The faint chime of the restaurant bell reminded Adele that the VIP table awaited. Her pulse quickened despite the hours of preparation and the practiced composure she had cultivated. She returned to the dining room, moving with the grace of someone accustomed to being watched. But tonight, the attention felt different. It felt magnetic, electric. Across the room, she caught sight of him. Jae-hoon was sitting perfectly still, his posture rigid yet relaxed, his sharp eyes scanning her movements with a predator's precision. There was no threat in the look, at least not the kind she feared, but the weight of it made her stomach flutter in ways she didn't understand. He raised a single eyebrow, a subtle gesture that made her pulse stutter. Adele's internal voice whispered, "Why me? Why now?" She reminded herself that curiosity was a dangerous companion. But the pull she felt toward him was undeniable. Every instinct told her to stay cautious, to retreat into the safety of anonymity. Yet something deeper, something wilder, urged her forward. She approached his table with a steady step, her tray balanced expertly in her hands. "You're back," he said, his voice soft but edged with curiosity. "Did you come to observe me, or to entertain me?" Adele placed the glass in front of him with precise care, meeting his gaze evenly. "I observe everything," she said smoothly. "But entertainment, that depends on how interesting you are." He smirked, leaning back in his chair, the faint shadow of amusement flickering across his face. "Bold. I like bold." Adele suppressed a shiver at the undercurrent in his voice. There was power there. Dangerous, intoxicating power, and yet a strange warmth that pulled at something inside her. As she walked away, her coworkers glanced at her with a mixture of envy and disbelief. Whispers followed her. He noticed her, of all people. Why her? It doesn't make sense. Adele ignored them. She didn't need their understanding. She only needed to keep moving forward, to see where this strange, intoxicating curiosity would lead. Back in the kitchen, she paused at the doorway, glancing once more toward Jae-hoon. He had not moved. His eyes followed her, lingering longer than propriety allowed. And in that glance, Adele felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She felt seen. Truly seen. This man, he's dangerous. But I want to know him anyway, she thought, her pulse quickening with anticipation. And for the first time that night, she didn't try to hide it. The private dining room was a sanctuary of soft light and polished elegance. The muted clink of cutlery and the faint aroma of sizzling delicacies outside seemed like a distant memory here. Adele felt the room shrink around her as she stepped inside, the air charged with something she couldn't name, danger, curiosity, and something far more intoxicating. Jae-hoon sat at the table, his posture flawless, the faint glint of a tattoo visible at the base of his collar. He didn't rise. He didn't even glance up immediately. He simply watched her approach as though he were weighing her every move, reading her like a book he already knew. Adele set down the tray with precision, her hands steady despite the rush of adrenaline in her chest. "You've endured ridicule your whole life," he said softly, his eyes piercing, almost unreadable. "Yet here you are, calm, composed. That is rare." Adele met his gaze evenly, refusing to shrink. "I've survived worse than you can imagine," she replied, her voice even but laced with defiance. For a long moment he said nothing, simply leaning back, letting the silence stretch. Then a faint smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. "Good," he murmured, almost to himself. "I like fearless." A thrill ran through her. Fearless. The word lingered in the space between them like a spark waiting to ignite. "Careful," she said, tilting her head slightly, letting a trace of humor curl her lips. "You might be dangerous." He raised an eyebrow, the shadow of a smile playing on his lips. "I am dangerous," he admitted softly, "but only to those who underestimate me." Adele's pulse quickened. There was power in his presence, dangerous, magnetic power, and yet it wasn't threatening. Not yet. It was a warning, a promise, a test. She placed his drink down carefully, her fingers brushing the crystal ever so slightly. He didn't flinch. He didn't even acknowledge it directly, but the faint tightening of his jaw told her he noticed. "Do you always challenge people like this?" he asked, voice smooth and deliberate, almost teasing. "I don't challenge people," Adele replied. "I test them." A small laugh escaped him, low and dark. "Interesting," he said. "Most would run. Most would bend. You do neither. You intrigue me." Adele felt a shiver of exhilaration run through her. Intrigue. She had never been the kind of person who could captivate someone like this. And yet here she was, standing in a room alone with a man who exuded authority, wealth, and danger, and he was interested in her. Her mind briefly flashed to the warnings of her co-workers, to the gossip she had endured for years. Yet in that instant all of it felt trivial. What mattered was the pull between them, the silent, magnetic tension that seemed to hum in the very air of the room. "You're unusual," he said finally, leaning forward just slightly, letting his gaze linger on her face. "I've seen many people. Many like you, none like you." Adele met his eyes, unflinching. "And what do you plan to do with me now that you've seen me?" she asked, her voice a mix of daring and curiosity. He smiled faintly, enigmatic and unreadable. "That depends," he said, "on whether you can survive the world you're about to enter." A thrill of danger and excitement ran through her. This was no longer just curiosity. This was a crossroads. A choice. And even though she didn't fully understand it yet, she knew her life would never be the same. As she walked out of the room, her pulse still racing, she felt his gaze on her back, intense, unrelenting, and magnetic. The world outside the private dining room buzzed as usual, but Adele no longer belonged entirely to it. She belonged in part to him now. And the thought both terrified and thrilled her. "This is just the beginning," she thought, her blue eyes shining in the dim light. "And I'm ready." The night air was cool against Adele's skin as she stepped outside the restaurant. The warm hum of the dining room faded behind her, replaced by the distant wail of city traffic and the soft rustle of leaves in the alleyway. Her shift was over, but something made her pause at the edge of the sidewalk, a feeling in her chest that refused to be ignored. And then she saw him. Jae-hoon leaned casually against the sleek black car parked in the shadows, his tailored suit perfectly sharp even in the dim streetlight. The faint glint of the tattoo at his collar caught the glow of a street lamp, an understated hint of danger. He didn't speak immediately. He simply watched her, his posture relaxed but undeniably commanding. Adele's pulse quickened. Her mind screamed caution, yet her feet moved forward of their own accord. "You're still here," he said, his voice low, deliberate, edged with amusement. "I wasn't sure you would be." I wasn't planning to be, she replied, keeping her tone casual though her heart thumped in her chest. Curiosity brought me out here. I've been warned about men like you. He straightened slightly, stepping closer. The faint scent of his cologne, something sharp, sophisticated, with a hint of danger, wafted toward her. Warnings are useful, he said, almost a murmur, but they're no substitute for experience. And you need experience. Adele raised an eyebrow, lips curling into a half-smile. Experience, huh? Dangerous experience, I suppose? He smiled faintly, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Depends on how you define danger. Most people confuse power with threat. I'm dangerous, yes, but only if you misunderstand me. She studied him, noting the subtle tension in his posture, the way his eyes seemed to weigh her, measure her. Despite the danger, she felt seen. Not just for her blue eyes, not just for her work ethic, not even for her body or her charm, but for the entire person she had spent years hiding in plain sight. She started, then paused, unsure how to frame the impossible. You're not like anyone I've met. I don't know if I should be afraid, or intrigued. He chuckled softly, low and dangerous, yet teasing. Both, he said. Fear and intrigue are often the first signs of life. If you feel nothing with me, then you've been dead long before you met me. Adele's pulse raced. The alley seemed narrower, the night air heavier. Yet instead of retreating, she took a small, deliberate step closer. And what exactly do you want from me, Jae-hoon? He held her gaze, unwavering. Not from you. I want to see everything you are. Every part of you you hide from the world. I want to see it. A thrill of fear, and something far more intoxicating, shot through her. He wasn't asking. He wasn't threatening. He was extending an invitation, and it was impossible to ignore. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card, black and sleek. The edges were sharp, the printing subtle but exquisite. He handed it to her without breaking eye contact. Consider this an introduction, he said. If you choose to come, you will see a world few are allowed to enter. A world that will challenge you, test you, and perhaps reward you. Adele held the card in her hand, feeling its weight, both literal and symbolic. Her instinct screamed caution, but the pull she felt toward him was undeniable. She had always been careful, always hidden parts of herself to survive. But tonight, she felt a daring curiosity stirring, stronger than fear. She looked back at him, steady and resolute. And if I accept, there's no turning back, is there? He smiled faintly, enigmatic and unreadable. No. But some journeys are worth the risk. The alley felt suddenly smaller, tighter, charged with the electricity of unspoken promises. Adele's heart pounded, not from fear but from exhilaration. As she slipped the card into her pocket and walked back toward the city streets, the faintest smile played across her lips. Dangerous. Exciting. Unimaginable. And entirely irresistible, she thought. I want it anyway. And for the first time in a long while, Adele felt alive. More alive than she ever had, standing at the edge of something that would change her forever. The night air was cool against Adele's skin as she stepped outside the restaurant. The warm hum of the dining room faded behind her, replaced by the distant wail of city traffic and the soft rustle of leaves in the alleyway. Her shift was over, but something made her pause at the edge of the sidewalk, a feeling in her chest that refused to be ignored. And then she saw him. Jae-hoon leaned casually against the sleek black car parked in the shadows, his tailored suit perfectly sharp even in the dim streetlight. The faint glint of the tattoo at his collar caught the glow of a street lamp, an understated hint of danger. He didn't speak immediately. He simply watched her, his posture relaxed but undeniably commanding. Adele's pulse quickened. Her mind screamed caution, yet her feet moved forward of their own accord. You're still here, he said, his voice low, deliberate, edged with amusement. I wasn't sure you would be. I wasn't planning to be, she replied, keeping her tone casual though her heart thumped in her chest. Curiosity brought me out here. I've been warned about men like you. He straightened slightly, stepping closer. The faint scent of his cologne, something sharp, sophisticated, with a hint of danger, wafted toward her. Warnings are useful, he said, almost a murmur, but they're no substitute for experience. And you need experience. Adele raised an eyebrow, lips curling into a half-smile. Experience, huh? Dangerous experience, I suppose? He smiled faintly, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Depends on how you define danger. Most people confuse power with threat. I'm dangerous, yes, but only if you misunderstand me. She studied him, noting the subtle tension in his posture, the way his eyes seemed to weigh her, measure her. Despite the danger, she felt seen. Not just for her blue eyes, not just for her work ethic, not even for her body or her charm, but for the entire person she had spent years hiding in plain sight. She started, then paused, unsure how to frame the impossible. You're not like anyone I've met. I don't know if I should be afraid, or intrigued. He chuckled softly, low and dangerous, yet teasing. Both, he said. Fear and intrigue are often the first signs of life. If you feel nothing with me, then you've been dead long before you met me. Adele's pulse raced. The alley seemed narrower, the night air heavier. Yet instead of retreating, she took a small, deliberate step closer. And what exactly do you want from me, Jae-hoon? He held her gaze, unwavering. Not from you. I want to see everything you are. Every part of you you hide from the world. I want to see it. A thrill of fear, and something far more intoxicating, shot through her. He wasn't asking. He wasn't threatening. He was extending an invitation, and it was impossible to ignore. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card, black and sleek. The edges were sharp, the printing subtle but exquisite. He handed it to her without breaking eye contact. Consider this an introduction, he said. If you choose to come, you will see a world few are allowed to enter. A world that will challenge you, test you, and perhaps reward you. Adele held the card in her hand, feeling its weight, both literal and symbolic. Her instincts screamed caution, but the pull she felt toward him was undeniable. She had always been careful, always hidden parts of herself to survive. But tonight, she felt a daring curiosity stirring, stronger than fear. She looked back at him, steady and resolute. And if I accept, there's no turning back, is there? He smiled faintly, enigmatic and unreadable. No. But some journeys are worth the risk. The alley felt suddenly smaller, tighter, charged with the electricity of unspoken promises. Adele's heart pounded, not from fear but from exhilaration. As she slipped the card into her pocket and walked back toward the city streets, the faintest smile played across her lips. Dangerous. Exciting. Unimaginable. And entirely irresistible, she thought. I want it anyway. And for the first time in a long while, Adele felt alive. More alive than she ever had, standing at the edge of something that would change her forever. The city lights sparkled like scattered diamonds as Adele followed Jae-hoon's sleek car through Seoul's night streets. Her pulse thrummed in her chest, not from fear exactly but from the anticipation of the unknown. Every neon reflection off glass buildings seemed to echo the question in her mind. What have I stepped into? The car stopped in front of a towering building, its sleek lines glowing under the city lights. Jae-hoon's penthouse was on the top floor, a private world suspended above the city's chaos. The elevator ride up was silent, the subtle hum of machinery a quiet contrast to the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. When the doors opened, Adele stepped into a space that seemed to exist outside of reality. The penthouse was a cathedral of modern elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a sprawling skyline, polished marble floors gleamed under soft recessed lighting, and every detail screamed wealth, power, and meticulous control. Jae-hoon stood near the windows, his silhouette framed by the city lights. The faint outline of his tattoo peeked from beneath his collar, a subtle reminder that beneath the elegance lay danger. You've never seen this world, he said, his voice calm but intense, and yet you're not overwhelmed. That's promising. Adele's eyes swept across the space, drinking in every detail. She felt a thrill, a mixture of awe and unease, and a strange magnetic pull toward the man who had brought her here. I'm not easily impressed, she replied, keeping her tone steady, though her voice carried a hint of wonder. But you're interesting. He smiled faintly, a small enigmatic curve of his lips. Interesting is subjective, he said. But you are not easily categorized. That intrigues me. Adele felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in the way he spoke, an undercurrent of danger, power, and expectation, that made her heart race. Yet it was not fear that propelled her forward. It was curiosity, desire, something she could not name. He gestured toward the city below. Most people who enter my world are blinded by the luxury, the power, the spectacle. They see only what I allow them to see. You notice the spaces in between. The subtleties. That's rare. Adele held his gaze steadily. I notice what others ignore. That's how I survive. Jae-hoon's eyes darkened slightly, a flicker of approval, or perhaps amusement, passing through them. Survival is essential, he said softly. But thriving, that's something different. Not many are capable of it. You might be. A tension settled between them, unspoken but palpable. It was a mixture of challenge, intrigue, and something far more personal. Adele could feel the weight of his gaze on her, the quiet measurement of her spirit. You're about to see more than most people ever will, he continued, voice low, deliberate. Luxury, power, influence. But with it comes danger. And it's not just mine. This world is unforgiving. Those who step in unprepared, they get consumed. Adele's pulse quickened. The warning was clear, but so was the unspoken promise. She had always survived, always found a way to navigate hostile spaces. And yet, she sensed that what awaited her here was beyond anything she had encountered before. And yet, she said, her voice steady, daring, I want to see it. All of it. Jaehoon's lips curved into a faint, almost approving smile. Good, he said. I like that in people. Not fear, but curiosity. Courage. The willingness to face the unknown and still walk forward. The city lights glittered below, reflecting in Adele's striking blue eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the exhilaration of stepping into a world she had never imagined, led by a man who was as dangerous as he was compelling. She was no longer just a server in a restaurant. She was crossing a threshold, entering a realm where everything, power, danger, desire, was heightened. And with each step she took, she realized she was no longer just observing. She was participating. This world, this man. I don't know where it will lead, she thought, her pulse alive with anticipation. But I want to find out. And Jaehoon watched her, silently acknowledging that once she had entered, there would be no turning back. The rooftop overlooked the city like a kingdom of lights. Seoul sprawled endlessly beneath them, the neon glow reflecting off glass and steel, 1,000 stories unfolding below. Adele stood at the edge, the wind tugging at her hair, carrying with it the scent of rain yet to fall. Every step she had taken since meeting him had led here, to this moment suspended between danger and desire. Jaehoon stood beside her, tall, composed, yet uncommonly human in the way he carried himself tonight. The faint outline of his tattoo peeked from beneath his collar, a subtle declaration of the man beneath the wealth, the power, the reputation. And his eyes, those dark, calculating eyes, were fixed on her, unwavering. You've seen a glimpse of my world, he said softly, voice low but commanding. You've walked paths most people wouldn't dare, and yet, you're still standing. Adele let out a slow breath, letting the tension in her shoulders ease. She had faced whispers, judgment, curiosity, and fear. And now, standing here, she realized that the most challenging path wasn't external. It was accepting the truth she tried to hide from herself. I survived because I had to, she said quietly, but I never realized I could choose who I am, until now. He took a step closer, his presence both overwhelming and grounding. I've seen many people. Some brilliant, some dangerous, some fleeting, but you, his voice softened, almost uncharacteristically vulnerable. You're impossible to ignore. Not because of your eyes, not because of your beauty, because of who you are, all of you. And I want to see all of it. Adele's heart stuttered at the words, at the raw honesty behind them. She had spent so long being reduced to her difference, her blue eyes, her outsider status, her very presence. But here was a man who saw everything, her strength, her wit, her defiance, her fragility, her fire. You claim me because I'm different, she whispered, a mix of challenge and vulnerability in her tone. He shook his head, stepping closer until the space between them was electric with anticipation. Not because you're different, because you're yourself. Fearless, bold, unafraid to stand where others would kneel. That draws me. That makes me want to protect you, to test you, to challenge you, and to see where it goes. Adele's breath caught. It wasn't just desire she felt, it was recognition. He didn't want her for appearances. He wanted her for the entirety of her being. The wind picked up, tugging at her hair, carrying with it the city's hum. She felt alive in a way she had never felt before, seen, chosen, acknowledged. The mockery of co-workers, the whispers, the stares, they all faded into insignificance. I never thought anyone would see me, she said softly. Really see me. And now, he asked, his voice low, a promise wrapped in a statement. She turned to him fully, meeting his gaze without hesitation. Now, I am ready to be seen. For a long moment, the world held its breath. The city lights below, the wind in her hair, the quiet hum of the night, it all faded into insignificance. All that remained was the magnetic pull between them, a dangerous, thrilling, intoxicating connection neither could deny. Jaehoon's lips curved into the faintest, most approving smile. Then you're chosen, he said simply. Not by chance, not by circumstance, by choice. And now everything changes. Adele felt a shiver of exhilaration, fear, and thrill wash over her. She had been mocked, judged, ignored, and underestimated. And yet here she stood, alive, empowered, and seen, chosen by a man whose power and danger matched her own strength. She smiled, a genuine, luminous smile that reached her eyes. Then let's see where this takes us, she said. The rooftop seemed to exhale with them, The city below a quiet witness to the beginning of a life that would be anything but ordinary. They mocked my eyes, she thought, looking out at the endless city lights, but he saw me, all of me, and I will never be unseen again. The wind carried their laughter, soft and unrestrained, into the night as two worlds collided, danger, desire, and destiny entwined forever.